Well, here's a computer question. I solved it, but I don't know how I did it. My internet service went out, and so I thought, well, so I was clicking on the little network symbol, on the lower part of your key, on the screen, and I had no service, and I thought, that's kind of strange. So I check everything, the router, whatever. So I went back into my settings. The machine, Windows 10, would not allow me access to the settings. I could go to the settings page, but everything was locked on that page. I could not make a single change for any of the network settings. And so it took me hours to try and figure out what was happening. But and finally, I had another computer, so I went and researched it, and it gave me a whole bunch of command line prompts. So you go in and you put in these command line prompts, and I'm not sure what it's doing. It's clearing something or whatever. But after about the umpteenth try with all these settings, everything worked just like it had worked before. But yet I had done nothing at all to touch it. All that happened is I lost the internet connection, and somehow it triggered this lock, on my settings. And I don't know what the relationship is with losing internet and locking out your settings, but that's what happened, and it came back. So I don't know if anybody else has experienced something like that. But
Sometimes I think you may have to reboot the modem or the router, whatever you've got there.
yeah, well, I did that. That's the first thing I did because I thought that was a simple. Then I rebooted the computer, wishful thinking that that would solve it all, but it didn't. And I went looking inside the router settings, to see if anything was unusual. And everything looked the same, except it said I didn't have an internet connection. So I think, well, okay, that's kind of what started me here. So, but how it locked up the settings, I don't understand that part of it. It's just you could see the screen, but you couldn't have any access to it, no matter what. Nothing. So, and so I mean, luckily I found this thing online that talked about these command line prompts, and all it said is just copy these settings into the command line prompt, and then reboot and try it and so on. So I tried, I don't know, 4 or 5 different of these commands, and I'm not sure what they were doing. I think maybe they might be clearing cache or doing something. I don't know, but anyways, it came back, and it was the strangest thing. I've never experienced that in my whole computer time. So
Well, talking about networking, I just had mine before getting the internet up and running. I was trying to set 2 wireless um, connection onto my Bell DSL modem router, and when I had everything working, it showed 169, all the stuff that Microsoft would give you as an error. And I'm like, what's going on? I had to manually um change the the IP4 um uh, IP addresses back to the way it was, and now it's working. Having it auto settings wouldn't work.
Yeah, I believe the 169 is a non-routable address. That may have been part of the problem.
Well, I was able to manually set up the IP because I knew which router it was and what I needed. But the funny part was try to find an IP that's not going to conflict. So you're like, what's the first one have? What the second has? Which one can I use? Is it a 3 or a 15 or 32?
Well, when you talk about routers, that still is one of the great mysteries to me, because the new routers have so much capability of things that you can do. You know, you can screen, you can block, you can do all kinds of other things, and yet I never really find you don't get instructions of the router. Basically, they tell you to go online, and most of the time you just follow the settings that it came with. But it would be interesting if we could ever find somebody that really understood like routers and all the capabilities, because I have an Asus one, and there's pages and pages and pages of stuff and settings, monitors, stuff you can look at, and I still haven't got a clue as to how to make this work to my advantage. I mean, I play with it every once in a while, but you know, if we could ever find somebody that really could give a good overview of how to maximize your router, you know, that would be great, but I don't know who that person is.
Well, if there's nothing you're doing that requires you to like play games online and set port forwarding and things like that, you really don't have to touch your router very often. The default settings work well. I have an Asus router too.
So on your Asus,
Go ahead, David.
on your Asus router, can you monitor all the people that are using, like everything that's hooked into your router?
Yes.
Like I can, yeah.
You can see them
And how
by
much-
MAC address or by IP address.
Yeah.
And I have a
Yeah.
program on Linux with a funny name. It's basically it's an IP scanner. It tells me all the IP addresses connected to my network.
It's called
Yeah.
Angry IP Scanner.
Angry IP, yeah, that's the
Angry
name for it.
IP Scanner.
Yeah, useful
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
I changed my router yesterday, bought a new one and changed it. Because it's downstairs in the middle of the house on the opposite side of the house, opposite corner. And so where I am here, I get a medium or weak signal, or it just drops out altogether. So I went from a wireless N to a AC. Now the Chromebook works better and faster. And I put in, because my laptop was only an N, I put an external dongle on it with a lift up aerial, and that seems to be working twice as fast. It was a little bit of a pain to set up, because normally when you have a router, it normally comes in 192.168.1.1 or 2.1. And this was 50.1. So I had a little bit of trouble trying to work out where it was in the browser, typing in the IP address. Because I couldn't sit, you have to type in, what should you type in? http://router.asus.com. And when I typed that into Chrome, when I typed that into Edge, it wasn't interested. When I typed it into Chrome, it worked. So obviously it didn't like the router. But eventually I worked out it was 50.1, so I changed it to 1.1 to put the system back as it was before. So I changed the router, but put all the settings back in for the old one. So when the wife turns her tablet on and turns her computer on, it all works the same. He hasn't got to change anything. Otherwise, I'd never hear the end of it.
Well,
A number of years ago, we had a presentation by Microtik. I think it was a Canadian distributor for that brand. But that's the only person I can remember who had a real grip on what routers did or didn't do.
They actually had a router set up that they could sell you with their own personalized software on it. I remember them.
Well, I'll pick this router because it was less than $100 and was AC, and it had beam forming on it because I knew it was in the corner of the house. What I would have liked to have bought was a Synology mesh router, but I can't get hold of one. No one stocks them, and if anyone's got them, they're sort of like 50% over the list price. There's loads of stuff you can't buy at the moment because it's in short supply.
I have a Synology disk station, but I don't have a Synology router.
Yeah, I've got 2 disk stations.
Well,
I've got 2 disk stations, and both disk stations have got their own backup drives. And one of the disk stations is also cloud synced to Dropbox.
oh wow.
So if you put a file in the disk station, it's 2 drives, so it's mirrored.
Mm-hmm.
Once a week, it backs it up to its own backup drive, and instantly it also copies it across the Dropbox.
Oh wow. Synology, I believe, also runs a web service now. I saw it in one of their emails.
It's on the NAS drive. The web server's built in the NAS drive. I used it before.
Oh.
You have to open a port to the outside web on your router, but yeah, you can host your own website on your Synology.
No, yes, I realize that, but I think Synology also runs a cloud service that if you want to back up your Synology disk station, you can back it up to their cloud.
Yes, that's right. But no,
Yeah.
I use Dropbox.
Yeah.
It gets too complicated. You have too many things.
Yeah.
You use Cloud Sync. You can have whatever you like with Cloud Sync. You can have Google. You can have Synology. You can have Microsoft Dropbox. Anything. Yeah? You just got to set it up through Cloud Sync. Set a folder, and that folder is automatically backed up in its own time.
Well, I wanted to let you guys know, this little gizmo here is my DSL TP-Link, and this week and last week it officially died on me.
Wow.
That's not good.
So-
I've got the same one.
and the thing is that it was working at my old place before we sold the house, and I moved with my dad, and we're renting this current house that we're living now. And when I turn this thing on, it decided to have its computer ports all flashing, and I couldn't get in. I saw that this section here got yellow, so something must have burned, and it got hit with a few lightnings on top of the house. So I don't know why it caused it to become barbecued. So thank God.
It probably hit your phone line, and that was straight in line with your phone line.
I don't know, but now the thing is that thank God I had the Bell DSL modem, and now it's working. And the advantage with that Bell router is that, or DSL router, is that when you put Cat5e Ethernet cable, it gives you a gig of like 1,000 gigabits per second.
I use a Cat 6 if I was you, not a Cat 5. A
No,
gigabit.
it's Cat5e.
Oh, right. So you might just be about all right.
Mm-hmm. So if you have a network card that has a 10, 100, and 1,000, it can go into like a small higher speed bandwidth. But yeah, that was my adventure for this week. Just waiting for the internet, having to choose which DSL to work with.